All right, let's try and talk about imaginary numbers, which is number 9 in the urban fantasy series Encrypted by Snn McGr, US author. Uh, and I say try because, and this is probably what you can say right off the bat with Snn McGr. She is extremely good at quickly summarizing what has happened in past books in this series, getting you up to speed or just reminding you what the hell happened in book 3 and in chapter 4. She is extremely good at doing the summarizing. When you come to try and talk about a book yourself, you realize, oh my god, how many fucking rabbit holes and cul-de-sacs you could get yourself into and twist tying, and you could just be going page after page or minute after minute talking about this series. And I think that's some of my other reviews of other books in this series have been that. So this is a urban fantasy world, like it's our world, but there are monsters. The monsters are real, and they're not monsters. They're cryptids. They're just non-human beings that go from basically just sort of things that are animals to other sentient beings. The Sarah who is the Sarah Zellaby, which Zellaby might be familiar to some of you, wasn't to me until it was pointed out in the book, is a cuckoo or a Jorlak, which is a humanoid-looking creatures. They actually the females all look basically like variations of that, younger or older. Males have their own thing, which they just look younger or older. There's no, they don't have any differences that way. They are from another place, another dimension, which they seem to have developed from basically what we'd consider a wasp. And they're telepathic creatures who can get in other people's heads, make them believe that you're their best friend, you're their long-lost sister, that you want to do everything for them. Sarah's actually developed even further skills of being able to manipulate memories and things like that. Indeed, she injured herself helping out one of her siblings, or one of her cousins in this book. So yeah, in the Encrypted series, it's all centering around the Price family, where they are all cryptozoologists and also, if necessary, monster hunters, though they're also conservationists. They are a splinter off from a thing called the Covenant, which just hunts down and kills anything that isn't human, that isn't what they consider natural, very kind of coded to kind of a Christian conservatism thing there. They do not agree with that. They believe that, some other beings, they just want to get along like human beings, and they should not be all exterminated willy-nilly. Now, in this book, we finally get a book from the point of view of Sarah, who has in past books gotten kind of injured and has spent a whole bunch of time recuperating, and is now kind of entering back out into the world, is going to go back across from where she was in, I think it's Ohio, to back to Oregon, where she's going to meet up with more of the Price family, and most specifically a fellow named Artie, who is another non-biological cousin, who is actually a incubus, which is the male version of this species, where basically his blood, sweat, pheromones basically make people fall in love with him, and he really, really, really avoids that happening. Goes out with the cologne, spends most of his time actually in his basement, holed up, because he's, afraid of, having that effect on people. He is half incubus, half human, actually. So we get that. We get a whole bunch of the Price family. This is probably the first book where I needed to really kind of concentrate to figure out who the hell each person is, because when you switch from Sarah's point of view to Artie's point of view, whoever's mom or dad also switches, and you have to kind of start looking at the Price family tree that is actually at the front of the book to figure things out. There's a little bit more of a strain there. I think the early books of this series, I sort of was annoyed slightly that McGr felt it necessary to just explain everything or remind you about what happened in past books because I've been reading them fairly close together. Now that I'm spacing it out and there's more and more time between books, I'm actually appreciating that more, even though, boy, yeah, this is a series where you have to start at number 1 and work your way through, and sometimes work on some of the novellas. I'll get to the novella at the end of this book because that's not probably necessary in this case, unless you're a super fan. So yeah, this is all about Sarah coming to terms with her biological family in a fairly dramatic, almost universe-ending kind of way. But we get that. We get Annie Antinomy Price in this book, Elsie, Art's sister, all the bloody parents, various friends, James, who is a sorcerer that Annie had adopted from the last book, that ain't witchcraft. So there's a lot of different players in here. I have to say that the first part of the book, I was like looking forward to Sarah, but actually being inside of Sarah's head and she being such an introspective character was maybe not playing to Seanan McGuire's strengths. When it gets to being a little bit too much inside people's heads, I find that things slow down and don't kind of move along. McGr is maybe better suited to a lot of the kick-ass adventure kind of action stuff. And indeed, as the book goes along and the plot starts with Sarah's cuckoo hive, that's when things get going better. We get to go into Artie's head, which also kind of breaks things up a little bit, which is also good. There's an interesting, I find, this actually had an interesting idea of, we have the concepts of love, whether, all the various different kinds of familial love, erotic love, romantic love, stuff like that, and of family, and of being protective of our family and all that stuff. And this book does tease the whole biological function of that. We like to think of this as something that's this is transcending everything, but no, there is actually a very biological function for our affections of having a romantic attachment, long-term attachment to another human being, that producing offspring, us gathering that offspring in a protective thing. While, the biology isn't the end all and be all, there's definitely some roots there that we should think about. And as much as the book is very much like Cuckoo's, these telepathic, psychopathic, from our point of view, creatures, we have been very much cast as villains. There's actually some biological stuff that says human beings have their own kind of ruthlessness that comes along with love, and who's family and who's not family, and who's threatening us and stuff like that. So that was interesting. There is, Sarah, I did not catch this, and it was pointed out in this book that she picked her own last name, Zellaby. And Zellaby is from The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham, a book I haven't read, but which I am now I should really go and read that book, because Seanan McGr is obviously a certain amount of what she has with these telepathic creatures is bouncing off of Wyndham. So I'm definitely going to get to that. One major complaint about this book, which has nothing to do with Seanan McGr, is that it's I got it as an ebook from the library. And the first thing I do with the ebooks is I go to the back and find out, okay, where does the book actually end? And it's okay, well, there's the epilogue. I went to the end of the epilogue, and okay, it ends at 98%. Then I read the book, and there's the epilogue. Wow, it's a really long-ass epilogue. Except no, the epilogue is only 3 or 4 pages, or maybe 2 or 3 pages. And then there is a novella hidden at the end of this book, which I'll talk about briefly at the end of this video. So the book actually ends not at 98%, but at 85%, which I just find annoying. It's sort of like you're walking upstairs, and then suddenly there's no more stairs, and you just freaking fall back down to the basement or sub-basement. And it's what the hell? it didn't spoil the book for me. It was just annoying. It was annoying. I mean, you could feel, it's a well-constructed book. I could feel, okay, we're coming to kind of a conclusion here. Some people, I think, complained about the cliffhanger nature of this book, whereas I felt like, no, I felt like, things with Sarah, things with Artie kind of got resolved. In a way, they both had emotional resolutions. And then we had just the epilogue is like oh shit, we're here. And there's kind of like, okay, this is going to be the next adventure for the next book. But it wasn't like oh, we've left things completely unresolved. This book does not, the adventure of this book definitely stands on its own as like, okay, this is a chapter in the encrypted family saga. So I was fine with that, but it was just, yeah. So I was fine with that. I found the what I can only assume is just a flub in whoever formatted this book. Is it should have been epilogue, and then it should have been, and now here's a novella for the last 15% of the book. That would have been much appreciated, and that's not something I put on Snn McGr. So yeah, I don't think this was as for me on my level. I think That Ain't Witchcraft, the last one, which was kind of a witchy one with Antinomy Annie Price, was more. I think I enjoyed that book more. It was much more action oriented, which I think plays to McGuire's strengths, whereas the kind of the more internal stuff. And there's a whole kind of thing of math magic in this book, which, who knows? I am very limited in my math. To me, it might as well have just been hand wavy magic stuff. So that didn't particularly engage me too much that way. Yeah. So it was like, yeah, it's an okay thing. I'll definitely go on to the next one. Now, let's go on to the novella Fllw Da Ldy, which is this is a novella that's basically set between the action after That Ain't Witchcraft, with Antinomy Price battling this magic thing, the crossroads, and then it's going to we're going to have this novella, and then we have Sarah, getting to come to terms with her cuckoo roots, I guess, as it is, and it's basically a road trip of Annie, her boyfriend Sam, Celia, Fern, James Smith, who is the sorcerer, doing a road trip and stopping by at kind of the old family digs in in Buckley, the Buckley Township, and specifically the Red Angel Bar. This is one of these stories that it's like it's going to get dealt with in whatever book that next, as just like a single sentence of Annie tells her grandma Alice about defeating the crossroads, and that her grandfather is still out there, and Alice is off to seriously go find Grandpa, even though she's been seriously going to look for Grandpa all this time. Alice Healy Price, Grandma Alice, is a hot 20-something looking young woman with tats, who actually is in her, probably in her late 80s. I think she was born in maybe 38 or something like that. But due to her searching around in dimensions and figuring out some sort of trick, she's actually been able to kind of age herself back a little bit, from probably being a young adult when her husband disappeared, to being kind of even younger, super fit, ready for action, is totally feared within both the cryptid world and the Covenant. They're just like, she's like, her favorite thing is hand grenades. She is a super scary urban myth for urban myths, kind of is how she gets things. But yeah, the novella is just, it's spackle between novels. It does not stand on its own. It does have some kind of little bits of kind of character work, but this is strictly an informational thing of, okay, we're setting up Alice for her going off on her adventure, which I'm sure will either show up in another novella, or she's going to get to have, probably, I assume she's going to get to have her own novel of her adventure, tracking down her husband, Thomas, so who is also a sorcerer, like her granddaughter Annie is. So yeah, it's like it was very disposable for that last 15 minutes, 15% in this ill-formatted ebook. All right, so yeah, that's my thoughts on Fllw Da Ldy, that novella, and on Imaginary Numbers by Snn McGr. I have been Jay. More videos later.